Good morning once again. My name is Priva Elibaz, and just a quick reminder, we are streaming live on our website at www.ctv.co.ug. Well, welcome back from our Twitter Jabs 1. The conversation continues right here on Twitter Jabs 2. And right now, I'm sitting down with Mr. Alan Muhereza, who is the team leader for the Youth for Tax Justice Network. Welcome to the show.
Good morning to you, Priva,
good morning.
And good morning to our viewers.
Yes. Well, so we see that the United Nations World Population Prospects 2022 indicated that the whole world is going to hit the 8 billion mark in the population, and particularly in Uganda, we are going to surpass the 48 million mark. What does this high increase of population mean to a country like Uganda?
Ideally, population increase would be a good thing because it means that a country has the labor that it needs to engage in production. It means that it also has a market. If you've been following keenly, the president has been keen on markets. Where do you sell your things when you've produced them? So if you have more people, and if you have and those people have the purchasing power, so more population ideally mean a bigger market.
More demand.
More demand, and yes. So that's the starting point, that for the countries that have been able to move and develop and have had higher populations, but those populations have been empowered to be able to first participate in production, i.e. some people are doing something. You have something, you're participating in either farming, either providing services and all that. And then of course the other thing is that the flip side is that also you've been able to purchase, you have a market. So from the word go, then that means that ideally it should be a good thing.
It should be a good thing, yes.
Yes. But when it comes to now, like Uganda, and I think I was following the earlier conversation, we have to prepare for our population, especially for a young population. I see statistics that showed that half of Ugandans are below the age of 15 years.
15 years, yes.
Which means that all those are not participating in production, i.e. they are not doing something that is contributing to the economy. So that means their dependence on the other very few people that are trying to do something and all that. But also it means that they can't be market. They can't. It means that if you produced in Uganda, there's no one who's going to buy your things because
they don't have the capability.
Yes, because half of the people are below the age of 15. So and of course also that questions brings in question other statistics that we've been hearing about middle income status. If we're saying we're middle income status, then who is earning this money? If half of us, and if you're saying we're going to be about 48 million, that means about 24 million are below the age of 15. So who earns that money we're talking about? So that is the challenge, that Uganda's population is a young population. It means that whatever is being done now is to make sure that you plan for that population, prepare for that population, so that in a few years, that population then can go on and then bring the prosperity that we want, either in terms of jobs, i.e. the labor market, or in terms of purchasing power, that they can be able to earn and have some bit of disposable income to purchase and be a market that can benefit the country. Yes.
Well, what could be the cause of this growth that we are seeing in the whole world, the population?
Well, I will not say I know I can attribute any, but what we know is that Uganda has the second highest fertility rate in the world after Niger. So, and I think the statistic was around 3.3% annual growth. So it means that we have very fertile people.
Yes.
People that but at a global level, I think you can attribute that to having more people born and having better healthcare
systems,
having better healthcare. But even here in Uganda, having the healthcare has improved. People no longer die of malaria. People no longer die of preventable diseases. So it means that we're having more people that are not dying than people that are being born. So I think automatically then that makes it possible that you'll have an increase in population.
Yes,
because the things that used to kill Ugandans are no longer there. Of course, there is some conflict. There used to be some conflict, or quite a lot of conflict, armed conflict, which we no longer see. Like I said, people used to die of preventable diseases, cholera, malaria, and all these other things, which have been managed quite well.
Measles and all that, yes.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about the aspect of COVID-19, the pandemic. Do you think it has also played a certain role?
I wouldn't say it has, but of course, if you have people confined in their spaces for more than 2 years, chances are that there will be some bit of explosion in. But I would want to also attribute it to the fact that we are just having more people that are being born than are dying. And of course, for COVID-19, well, I would not have any information that, because people are confined in their houses. So
they are making more babies.
They made more babies, yeah, but it could be a factor. It could be.
Yeah, well, what is actually the implication of such population growth on Uganda's tax base?
Again, ideally, it would be a good thing that you have more people. Those people are fully participating within the economy, and then you have a residue in terms of the tax that they pay. But in Uganda, of course, like I said, then if most of our people are young people, it means that now the dependency levels are high. You don't have people having that disposable income to spend, where government then can tax either indirectly through VAT, excise duty, and all that, or they're not having that profit that you would say you're working to get at the end of the day, so that government can tax. So, but it could also be a good thing that if we planned for this population, if I remember the African Union theme for 2017 was harnessing the demographic dividend through investment in young people. So there is a realization that within Africa we have a very young population.
Yes.
And that population, we can benefit from it like other regions benefited, Southeast Asia and some bit of the Middle East, where people planned for those populations. That is, they had quality education, good education that can then go on and innovate and come up with solutions that will better their countries. They had good healthcare, and of course, we don't have the best healthcare, but we are trying on that aspect. People are no longer, like I said, are no longer dying of preventable diseases. What we are facing more is chronic diseases and non-communicable diseases, things that also, if taken care of, could give people more time, healthy time to work, and then contribute within their economy. So, but it also goes to issues of the infrastructure that you put in place these systems and infrastructure that will help young people participate within their economies. And if we do not do that, and for me, when I talk about infrastructure in this era, we are talking about internet fiber, we are talking about people being able to access simple things like electricity, people being able to access computers, things that they use in their day-to-day lives as young people. So we are still way off if you look at our budget priorities, and if you look at the way we've been preparing young people. Like you said, COVID-19 happened and we spent 2 years when our schools were closed.
And we came back.
So what that means is that you cannot, then such people cannot compete with their counterparts whose school did not stop. People just switched to virtual learning, whatever, and all that.
Yes.
Yeah. So for our tax base, if we planned properly, because I remember I said recently that if you look at a population of 40-something million people, and you only have about 1.3 active taxpayers, and those both companies and individuals, that is very little. Those are very few people. So when you hear URA saying that we collected 22 trillion, it's from 1.3 people, taxpayers, both companies and an individual. So the idea is that if we planned properly, invested in human development, that is invested in educating these young people, invest in having them have good health care, so that you don't spend more time in hospital than at work.
Doing something productive.
Yes. Healthcare, but also the systems and infrastructure to enable that work. Then it would be a good thing that we are having more young people.
It would be a good thing. Well, of course, you've clarified on the fact that, of course, half of our population may not really have the capability to contribute directly to the economy. So how do you think, actually, minus a bit of planning, how do you think government can benefit from this population growth? Let's say that, let's assume they have planned, they have put all these things in place. How would they benefit?
Of course, if now we are talking about if we've planned for this population.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, then you would have more young people engaged within the economy. We would not have issues of unemployment. We would not have issues of, because at the end of the day, for people to benefit, for countries that have benefited from their populations, you can look at China, for example. When we're even as early as the 1930s, China was still colonized by Japan. But China is now the second biggest economy in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, so it means that you are having more, the government took deliberate decisions to empower their people. So you're having China now as the biggest market. And I think it's usually the president that usually jokes that if he sold something for $1 in China, he would be a billionaire, because you have a market that can produce, you have a market that can purchase.
Yes.
So that is what an improved, I wouldn't call it an improved, that's what an empowered population can do. At one point, China was the hub of production because they had the labor, and it was cheap labor. But that labor was because some of it had been specialized labor, experts, but also some of it was that semi-skilled labor. So everything almost was being manufactured in China because of their population. Right now, everything that you want to consume is also being consumed in China. If you look at the biggest companies that have made millions and millions of dollars, it's because they have people in China buying their things. So you could say the same for, if you come here in Africa, you could say the same for Nigeria, you could say the same for Ethiopia, you could say the same for all these countries that have already surpassed, I think Nigeria is over now 200 million people.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you can sell something in Nigeria, you'll have, as a country, prospects of now doing business, taxing that business, and also keep investing in your population. So I start from a point where we've empowered this population. Before that, it's just a time bomb. It's just chaos brewing. It's chaos because you cannot have 20 million people being dependents. Meaning, when I wake up in the morning, they are not working.
Yes.
They are not doing anything, but they expect to eat. They expect to have clothing. So that puts a strain on the few that are working. So it all goes back to then how do we as a country and as a government plan to say that people have got the education that they need, that gives them the skills they need to participate meaningfully within the economy. So that when it comes to the other side, because if you're participating in production, you're getting a wage, you're doing what, then it means you can also purchase
you
something.
can do something, yes.
And that is how a country grows. That's how we benefit as a country, as a continent, from the demographic dividend that we have been talking about for the last 15 years.
So, of course, as the government tries to, empower their population and all that, what are some of the challenges that you think they'll definitely be up against?
Of course, resources. When we talk about investment, we talk about resources. And as you know, our government is not collecting enough resources to fully finance its budget, for example.
Yeah.
And once you do not invest, then you cannot expect a return where you've not invested.
Yes.
Yeah, so it means that every time we do not invest in young people, every time government doesn't have resources to invest in young people, we are losing out, because then everyone else around us as a country, but also as a continent, is moving forward. And for us, we are being left behind. So the first challenge is resource mobilization. And of course, for us, when we are talking about resource mobilization, you talk about resource mobilization, allocation, and utilization. It is one thing to have the money. You can tax people, you can sell oil, but then how do you allocate it? What are the priorities? Is it defense? Like I was saying, Uganda has been having relative stability for some time, but we still see our budget expenditure going up. We don't see the same for some of these critical sectors. And also, when you look at issues of debt, for example, now you're having a population that is not meaningfully engaging in production and contributing. At the same time, you're borrowing for them to pay later. Now, how are they going to pay later? How are they going to when they cannot participate within the economy? So the first challenge, of course, is going to be resources. When you look at the tax to GDP ratio, i.e. what production happens within the country and what the country gets from in terms of taxes from that, Uganda is still around hovering between 12% and 14%. Now, for countries that have actually been able to take care of their economies and that tax to GDP ratio is way above, in the 20s, 30s, that if you're getting 30% as a government from the overall production or the economy that you're having, then you can be able to put money in sectors that are critical to human development. Then we will not have issues like electricity being expensive. We will not have things that young people need to innovate, internet. Those will not be expensive, but we are not collecting enough money as government or as a country to see to it that that we can then invest in the young people, because we have to invest in the young people if we are to benefit from this population explosion or the population growth. So that's where we start from. Raise resources sustainably through fair taxation, through a comprehensive tax incentive regime whereby multinationals also get to pay their fair share of tax, where you get to harmonize your tax regimes with your neighbors, so that you don't forgive someone and then Kenya forgives, and then you, at the end of the day, you find that you're collecting nothing. Also, when we decide to borrow, we borrow for things that are going to be critical for human development. I know the government has taken a deliberate decision to borrow for infrastructure and but that infrastructure being there and not being used is also a wastage of resources. So even the way we raise resources matters, and then we allocate them, invest them for young people, sectors that are critical to young people. And for me, these sectors now have shifted because the world is changing. We can no longer, of course, roads are good, yes, but I can be able to be in Uganda and do work in the United States. Yes, I don't have to go to the United States. I just have to need the capabilities and the infrastructure in place to make sure that I compete globally.
Well, so how can the government ready itself, honestly, with what lies ahead and how you've just, explained everything? How can the government ready itself for what lies ahead?
I want to believe that there are people that are paid to think for this country. We have a national planning authority that comes up with development plans.
Yes.
I think we are now in the NDP3, National Development Plan, the third one.
Phase 3, yes.
In the Vision 2040 for Uganda. I think that's where we should start from, to say, and not that people don't know these things. We just have to be deliberate as a country, but also even as young people, to demand that these, the planning happens in a way that, because the way it should have happened, or the way it should happen, is that you have the NDP3, and then you have annual budgets that then operationalize that development plan.
Yes.
So ideally, if you're saying that we are going to benefit from young people participating within the economy, that should reflect within the budgets that passed every year.
Every financial year.
Which mismatch, and which we've seen that there is a mismatch, that what NDP3 is talking about, whether in terms of resource mobilization, whether in terms of critical sectors, it's not what is reflected in annual budgets. So that is where we should start. And like I said, we have an entire planning authority. It should do its work to plan for young people.
Yeah.
And those plans should then translate to the budgets, because that's where resource allocation happens. That's where Parliament, our politicians, our representatives go and allocate to say, now, for this year, we are going to give this sort of resources for this particular sector. So that's where we should start, to say we've made plans as governments, we have agendas, we have visions, we have things that are all good to hear and look at as a country. But if we don't then see those translated within the budgets that we pass, within the accountability processes that once we've passed these budgets have the resources done what they're supposed to do. Beyond that, then we will keep coming here, talk, and then young people will not be helped. But also, what would have been then an asset as a population then becomes a liability. Then it becomes an issue of security. It becomes an issue of stability. It becomes a cocktail of all things, just because we've not been able to do the necessary planning and investment that we have to do in young people.
Thank you for advising the National Planning Authority. But now, let's talk to Ugandans. What should Ugandans ready themselves for? I mean, with the population growth.
Well, if we do not plan, there's going to be chaos. That is just a matter of time, because this young population has to feed. This young population has to do or feel, I would not want to say a good life, but they have those prospects. They have that expectation that there should be an environment where they thrive, for example.
Yeah.
There should be an environment where someone does not sleep hungry, does not die of hunger. There is an expectation that, so as a country, to prepare is to say we have to put our politicians to task, because the politics is where resources are allocated, are shared, those are political decisions. And like I said, we have a National Planning Authority. Why isn't the decisions it takes implemented through the budgets, through the... So as young people, as Ugandans, the first thing I would say is that we should participate actively in the political processes of this country. That is where power lies, and that is where resources are located. And if we are to then plan for ourselves, we have to be part of the processes and the decision making that happens. And that is within Parliament, which is a political institution. That is within Cabinet, which is a political institution. That is, even when we talk about the judiciary and all these, those are also functions of a political system. So that is the first place, that as Ugandans, because if we do not, then we're just going to go the way what we saw in the Arab Springs, what we are seeing in Sri Lanka, what we are seeing globally.
The uprising.
Yes, because people have to eat. If you're hungry, you cannot think about what you're going to do next. You will be preoccupied with first sorting your belly and all that. So the first advice is, let us participate actively in political processes, because that is where the decisions are made, and that is where resources are allocated. Then secondly, again, we should participate in the planning. When we talk about, for example, budgets, every year there is a budget cycle. It starts in around September, ends around May the following year. From local government to ministerial level to national level, young people, especially young people, because this is where the burden is. This is where these are the people that don't have jobs. These are the people that have gone through education but have not been able to use that education to benefit themselves, to have a good life, should participate in those processes. Where are we putting our money? On what are we spending our money? As a country. And then at that point we can be able to say, no, you've not allocated resources here.
Yeah.
You've not, and it's an annual process. If we are late this year, it will be there next year. It will be there the other year. You have to be assertive in taking charge of our futures, because at the end of the day, we are going to be here the longest. And if there are going to be consequences of unemployment, if there are going to be consequences of conflict, if there are going to be consequences of even simply
teenage pregnancies and
exactly, it is us that are going to face those challenges. So we can do two things. First, let's participate in politics. I know it may sound controversial, but that is where all the decisions are made. it's a politician that decides that Mulago will get money, or Chankwanzi will get money. That's a political decision. It's taken in parliament, in caucuses, party caucuses.
Meetings and all that, yes.
Yes, yes. Then, of course, then we'll also have to go and through the allocation process, that is the budget processes, both at local government level, but also at national level. And then lastly, we have to be each other's keeper. Utilization of our resources. When we get to know that certain amounts have been allocated somewhere, we don't need to first even wait for the Auditor General to come and say, but this road is not there.
Oh,
but
yes.
as young people, and I remember a few years ago, there was an issue with the Kapchora Queen Buko Road.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was in a terrible state. And young people said, no, I know quite, they had a campaign, UNRA came and he said, and eventually I think the road has been worked on. But they didn't even wait for their politicians. They didn't even wait, but they said this road is impassable. And Kapchora, it has CP falls and what, people cannot be coming and see and be like this on such a road. And they were led by, I've forgotten his name, but what we know is that road has been worked on, or is being worked on. So what I'm saying is that we should be each other's keeper. We should put fire under people's feet to deliver what they said they would deliver. And that goes even monitoring simple things. We don't need LOC5 or IGG to know that this road was supposed to be done, it's not done. Then who is in charge of that? We don't have to wait for NOP, for example, to take food to Karamoja. We know there is a ministry for Karamoja. We know that there is ministry for disaster preparedness. We know.
Yes.
So as young people, we should be active in some of these processes. We do not need to first wait for IGG, whatever, to say, okay, now money was stolen here, and then no, because these are things that we are supposed to be relating with on a daily basis, things that we are supposed to say, okay, if there's supposed to be a nurse in this health center at 9 a.m. and they are not here, who is responsible? Then you make a phone call. That way, then we get to be each other's keeper, but also to make sure that people do what they're supposed to be. And then the planning will come in, and then we'll move. Yeah, but we have to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere.
Yes, yes.
Well, with, of course, the world population hitting 8 billion, yes, what are some of the ripple effects that will affect Uganda later on?
Of course, the first thing that we have to look at is two things. Okay, three. One, the energy needs of such a population. You know that currently people are talking about energy in a war of the last quite a number of years. We've been using fossil fuels to run our economies. You know, like right now the fuel is high and almost everything is on a complete standstill, or everything is now has increased and all that. So there will be issues around energy. If you have 40 million people, if you have 100 million people, if you have 1 billion people, how do you sort their energy needs? And if we are talking about innovation for young people, those are solutions that could be coming. Right now we are talking about energy transitioning from carbon fuels to cleaner energies, but the question will still remain, for you to develop as a country, you need energy. How are you then going to provide energy needs for such a population? Two, how do you feed such a population? And of course, we took these as challenges, but they're also opportunities for young people to say, if you have 8 billion people, what are they eating? Who is producing that food? Who is producing? Are we innovating on what we are eating? Are we eating responsibly? Are we? So those are challenges, and that's why I think we will now starting seeing issues within Karamoja and what of food. Because if you have a population, you have to feed it. There will be people that will have to plan how are we going to feed this country. And like I said, if you're hungry, that is a matter of security. You are not going to do anything else. No, you're not going to think productively to say, today I have to innovate something when your stomach is empty. The first thing you'll be thinking about, how do I get some food in the stomach? Then you even become susceptible to issues of conflict, crime, because you're stomach is empty.
It's empty.
So yes, so that is the second thing, that how do we feed that population? And it could be at a global level, but also here in Uganda, how do we feed our people? Because that is an issue. That is a security issue. That is a... Then third, so there is energy, there is feeding, but also then how do we meaningfully participate within our economies to be prosperous? Because if you have a certain aspiration, a certain level where you want to be, and it doesn't happen, or it takes long to happen, there's agitation, and then we go back to that curve that we've been talking about. I think it is the IGAD conflict early warning mechanism, conflict. I think it's conflict and scenario building early warning mechanism, which showed the factors of that lead to conflict. And some of the things that we are talking about are the same things that they've identified as those that have led to conflict. So we have unemployment, we have issues of resource allocation, land, issues of immigration and all that. So those are the three, I think, issues that I could think about. We have to get our people, our young people, meaningfully participating within production. That way, then as a government, as a continent, we can be able to tax them, we can be able to invest in them, and then that cycle can then be self-perpetuating. Secondly, we need to address their energy needs. For me to set up a factory, electricity must be cheap. For me to have a 24-hour, I would call it economy, where people work in different shifts and they don't stop and keep on.
Yeah,
we have
productivity
to have
is a lot, yes.
Energy. So energy has to be cheap and affordable and sustainable. So those are issues that I think as a country, as a continent, even at a global level, we need to critically think about. And then, of course, how do we feed our population?
Yes. Well, Mr. Alan Muheres, what are your final closing remarks?
My final closing remarks, I think, will be to the National Planning Authority. Our young population, as of now, is an asset.
Yes.
If we planned for it, if we invested in it, and this goes to even to URA, Ministry of Finance. Let us put our house together in terms of how we raise our resources. Let's make sure that everyone pays their fair share of tax. Let's make sure that we have tax incentives, policies that are transparent on who gets, why they get those incentives, and the benefit of getting them. We make sure that when we are borrowing money, we borrow it to put in human development and utilize that money for the benefit of young people. And then we make sure that we allocate resources in sectors that are critical to developing young people. If we do that, then we can then harness what we've been calling the demographic dividend within our youthful population. If we do not, well, we can just say that it is it will then be one of the biggest liabilities that we'll have as a country. And then that doesn't help anyone. Anyone
at all.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Alan Muheres, for, coming on our show and speaking so much, wisdom to everyone out there that is, probably watching right now.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's all we had for you right here on our Twitter Jabs 2. The conversation that we were looking at was the UN report on the world population prospects 2022 that did envisage the current world population hitting the 8 billion mark, as well as the Uganda population surpassing the 48 million mark. Of course, we watch and wait to see what will be happening in the coming years. And of course, at the end of the day, like he mentioned, 50% of our population in Uganda is under the age of 15 years. So we have to set our priorities right as a country, and of course tackle issues like famine that would not be able to help anyone, any normal functioning individual, to come up with some sort of productivity. So well, there you have it. The conversation continues on our social media platforms, that is Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at CTV Uganda. Coming up is the Wellness, Beauty and Lifestyle segment. My name is Priva Elibaz. Good morning.